About the massive drone attack on Moscow, a bit of conspiracy theory, and what Prigozhin has to do with it. As we know, a drone raid on the Russian capital was carried out today by an unidentified party. Russian officials immediately rushed to accuse Ukraine of this attack without providing any direct evidence. Also, the Russian Defense Ministry claimed that all 8 unidentified drones were shot down, although Russian media reported that 32 drones were detected. In other words, the numbers are significantly different, and the Russian Defense Ministry is clearly trying to underestimate the extent of today's raid. In addition, an interesting point, according to the same Ministry of Defense, 3 drones were shot down by electronic warfare. That's how many drones crashed into residential buildings. In other words, by knocking the drones off course using electronic warfare rather than firepower, the Russian military directed them to Russian residential buildings. The fact that local cab drivers had their navigation devices turned off is an indication of the scale of the use of the systems. The usage of these systems in the city is not just undesirable, it is dangerous. After all, it does not destroy the drone, stuffed with explosives, but throws it off course, and doing it in a place with dense residential areas is fraught with danger. It is much safer to hit such drones using rocket or cannon elements, which provoke detonation of the warhead. Using electronic warfare, we get an uncontrollable drone filled with explosives, which flies in an unknown direction. In other words, the air defense system in Moscow acted as unprofessionally and panicked as possible today, endangering the lives of the citizens because they were not confident in the capabilities of their SAMs to intercept these targets. This is just the most disgraceful thing. But it is much more interesting to find out what it really was. And here I would like to remind you of the incident with the 2 drone strikes on the roof of the Kremlin on the eve of May 9th. At that time 2 Russian officials blamed Ukraine for the incident. But then there was an interesting nuance. On May 3rd, a certain Ruslan Puhov commented to the Financial Times on the Kremlin strike incident, saying that the drones that struck the Kremlin could have been launched from near Moscow, which allowed them to bypass air defenses. For those who don't know, he is an officer of the main directorate of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Russia, who is a propaganda expert and also oversees a network of pro-Russian military experts and analysts around the world. Despite the fact that it was about some partisans, Puhov voiced what primarily worries the organization he works for, Main Intelligence Directorate. Now on Moscow realized a raid with even more drones, 8 or 25, it makes no difference. The main thing is the fact that if it is Ukraine, such a massive swarm was able to fly hundreds of kilometers to the Russian capital absolutely unhindered. And then, where is all the Russian air defense? What if it wasn't Ukraine? I'll allow myself a little conspiracy. Does Prigozhin and his subordinate PMC Wagner, as well as their direct FSB handlers, the ability to launch drones from the suburbs? The answer is clear: who can stop them? I absolutely do not rule out that this raid on Moscow is an internal factor in the escalation of confrontation between the security services, the FSB, and the Russian Ministry of Defense. And Prigozhin's latest aggressive grumbling about Generals Shoigu and Gerasimov only confirms it. What can I say? The further it goes, the more interesting it becomes.